Hi, my name is Teal, and I'm your host for the SweatNet Be Amazing podcast, where we share stories of amazing women who live in our communities. My hope is that you will feel encouraged and inspired after listening to each episode. Hi, y'all. It's Teal with the Be Amazing podcast. And before we get into who the guest is today, I am so excited about Imperfect Mommers. If you guys have seen my Instagram stories or if you've seen reels, I've been wearing these super cute outfits, sports bras and leggings. Elle Woods is definitely my favorite right now, but she has so many amazing products on her website. Erica has done a phenomenal job with creating such a affordable brand, and the clothing is legit. Like, everything hugs your curves, it feels good, you look good. It's gonna inspire you to work out. So I want you to go right now to imperfectmommers.com and order some sports bras, $19.99, leggings, $29.99, all different sets and colors. And if you do it the month of May and you use the promo code 5YRS, you're going to get 30% off your order. So what are you waiting for? Go right now, shop imperfectmommers.com. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Be Amazing podcast. And today I have a guest who I'm excited to talk to. I wish I had her information early on. As a mom, we all struggle at the different stages that our kids go through. And we're going to talk about college admissions. So I was telling her, like, oh my gosh, where were you when I was going through this? Because I could have so used direction. And I'm sure that most of you that are listening will feel the same way. But her name is Elizabeth West. So Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff we're going to talk about. And I've asked you ahead of time to give us some tips, which the moms that are listening, I know are going to be all over this, like, hands down. This is going to be stuff they want to know.
Great.
But before we jump into the meat of the conversation, tell me a little bit about who you are.
Okay. Well, I am a mom. I am a wife, and I was in college admissions for 10 years. I was associate director of admissions at UNC Charlotte and director of admissions at Carolinas College of Health Sciences. And I loved admissions. Never thought I'd leave admissions, but then I had kids, and you know how that happens, where it's like, oh, I don't want to travel, and I don't want I don't want to miss this. So I pivoted and I started teaching at Central Piedmont Community College in English, but I still help people with transfer admissions because it was my background, and I never stopped loving admissions. So I spent 15 years there. And now I opened my business, EWC Consulting, just as a side hustle. And I thought, oh, this might be fun. You know, I get to do my admission stuff. And then it grew and grew and grew. And I thought, I've got to make a decision. And so I took the leap and I left my comfort zone, and I left my full time job, and I've never looked back. It has been one wild ride, and I absolutely love it.
That's so much fun to hear on several different points. One being that you turn this side hustle into like a full blown business, which is amazing. But the other part is just the uniqueness of the service that you provide, and that there is such a need for that, and that there are moms and dads both. I'm sure when they find out who you are and what you do, are like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, just to know they have that resource. But I know before the whole admission thing, because I read this, is that you actually wanted to be a journalist because you love sharing stories. And that's something that we both share, is that love for hearing stories and wanting to share them. So tell us a little bit about that time where you were going after to be a journalist, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in, college admissions.
So funny. It's because, like, you just never know where life is going to take you. And I'm originally from upstate New York, and I was like, I'm going to write for the New York Times. That's my goal. And got out of college and couldn't find a job. And my parents moved down to North Carolina, and I thought, okay, well, I'll write for a newspaper down here. That's fine. And couldn't get a job. I did get a job, but it was for $16,000 a year. And I thought, I can't afford rent. Like, I can't afford So I found an admissions counselor job in the Fayetteville newspaper. Um, and I applied and I got the job. I am convinced because I was a tour guide in college, random, but whoa. I mean, admissions allowed me, I was in charge of publications for our department. So, I still got to do that journalism stuff. And throughout my career, and then I taught English and I taught writing. And so, and I wrote, and I published an essay, and so like all of these things, like you don't necessarily have to be a journalist. You can be an admissions officer and use all this great journalism stuff. And now I have a podcast. And like you, I get to interview people and I get to like come up with these fascinating ideas. I think they're awesome. And it's just a way to tap into that passion that I had when I was 16 years old.
That's so awesome. Part of the admissions would you say, like, with when it comes to the fact that you've done writing in English, how much of that are you involved when parents are trying to get their kids ready for college? Because I know there are essays that have to be written and submitted. Do you really get to tap into that with the student as well as their parents on, the important, what kind of things go into that?
It's so funny because it really is a whole journey that I go and that I'm allowed to go with my families. And so really when you are talking about the admissions process, a lot of people zero in on the essay writing and the applications, but we actually do a ton of work before that. And I think that that comes from my background as an educator. I want the student to know themselves. I want them to know the colleges that they're looking at and then make a really good solid decision about college fit. And that comes before, that comes months before we even apply. And so, yeah, I bring a lot I build curriculum, which is what I've done for 15 years. I when you're talking about the process, I love plans, I love a system, and so it's very systematic how I approach it because that's just how my mind works. But then when you talk about the joy of being able to teach writing, and when you talk about essay, I really teach it like a literary teacher. Oh, what's your story, and how can we communicate that with your voice? And so that's just such a wonderful gift to be able to do that. And then again, the admissions background that I have, really knowing at what time do you need to fill out this form and send the letters of recommendation. And I just know that because I was on the opposite side of the desk.
I think that's so important. Like, just the fact that you said you're talking about plans and like how to piece it all together. And I love the fact that you talk about a story because I think it probably, and this is just me, listening and thinking about if it had been my son that you were working with and having him really take a look on the, who he is as a person, how far he's come in his own personal journey. Like, how amazing is that to help them see themselves in that light and be able to articulate that and actually write it out. The families and the kids you work with, I'm sure at the end of the process are probably like, wow, even at themselves, because they don't realize at that age, they don't realize a lot of things, but they don't realize like maybe all that they've already accomplished at a young age.
My whole goal and our whole goal, I'm so used to being a solopreneur, but now I've got a team. And so it's like weird to say I or me. So now the goal is to provide that soft place to land for families. So I mean, I have moms that are texting me, that are emailing me, and I feel like I'm part of the family. And what an honor it is to be on this journey with the whole family. So dads and moms, I tend to talk to the moms a little bit more than the dads. That's okay. And then when you talk about realizing the potential of that student, um, it doesn't mean that everyone is Ivy League bound. And I don't, I kind of reject that. I really want you to find the right fit instead of the prestige. Let's get out of that prestige game. Let's get out of that, name brand. Uh, I liken it to like finding a handbag that you like. Like, let's get out of the Louis Vuitton of college and go, let's get to where you're going to feel comfortable and where you belong. And these things may be very different, but we talk about that a lot.
Is there one particular, like you've worked with family, like so many families and so many students, but is there one that like really sticks out to you that has made an impact working with that family or working with that student to, find the right fit?
I think that the families that really stand out to me are the ones that are the parents are okay with not guiding the process. And those are the ones that I work really well with because ultimately it's your child's choice. I mean, I know you're paying for it. I know I'm a mom too. I get it. But when you look at this is one of the first decisions that your child is going to make that is an absolute adult decision that's going to impact the rest of their lives, they have to have buy-in. And they have to feel, you can't tell a teenager anything. So they have to feel like they are kind of running the show. Now, I'm not saying that they're not getting guidance from me, and I'm not giving them some tough love sometimes when I'm managing their expectations. But I find that most of the time when I deal with families and they're successful through this process, it's where the parents have sort of backed off a little bit. And conversely, I've seen it go really awry when moms and dads are trying to manage and sometimes dictate where their student belongs, and it just becomes a fight at that point. And I think that there are ways where we can find consensus, where we can find compromise, but it can't be a fight, it can't be a battle.
That's really important. I'm glad that you really have talked about that. I know for me, my son went to one college starting out first year, and then he came home and he's like, "Mom, I have a plan. I need to shift." And at first, I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about?" Kind of thing. And finally, I had to just relax and support him the best that I could because he was making that decision because it's his life and he had a plan. And he came to me and he, said, "This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it." And he followed through and has done all of it. He's now an ER nurse at the trauma unit in Charlotte for Atrium and loves it. But had I gotten involved on the control side, trying to control it, there would have been a fight and it could have damaged our relationship. So I really appreciate the fact that you addressed that because it is really important and it's so hard as a parent. It's so hard.
It's so hard to just be like, I gotta be quiet now, and I can't.
And he hadn't
Yeah.
even prepped me. He had called me and prepped me for what he's like, "Mom, I need to come and talk to you." And I was like, "Okay, what is this about?" He's like, "Mom, just wait. I'll be there to talk to you and share everything." So it was just it's a process for a parent too on how to take a step back and allow them to fly.
Absolutely. And, I feel like my son's 16. So I'm going through this at the same time as everybody else. And I feel like, I can give to you as my family something that I can't give myself because I can't be objective with my son. My son is my heart, he's my joy, but I can look and I can be very objective with your family. And I think that that helps give me insight to helping you more than just, and I'm very much an advocate for protecting their mental health, protecting and making this experience joyful rather than, well, this is what you don't have. And this is where you're not going to go. I can't stand that part of admissions, and I think it's really, detrimental to a student psyche.
Very much so. I think that there's a lot of pressure, and I think that kids feel that. And if there's a way to really focus on who they are and it be a true experience for them that they can buy into and be excited about, I think that is such a game changer for the student as well as the family. So, I think that's a great way to educate and to help families. So I love what you're doing. And with that said, I want to get into like some tips.
Yeah.
So do you have like 3 tips that you can share with us to help a mom and a dad, but to
Yeah.
help parents, like, with this whole process?
You know, I think my first tip is to start early. I don't think I have an eighth grade daughter, I can't help but not talk about college with her. But I think that, you don't need to come on strongly too early. So, I mean, I think that the sweet spot for getting started with college prep is probably ninth grade to just make sure you're taking the courses that you need to take in high school and have sort of that forecasting session of what courses are you taking, what tracks are you going, because there really is a disparity between core academic courses and some courses that are wonderful, like entrepreneurship, like some of those electives, health sciences, but they are not considered by colleges in the GPA, in the college application GPA. So these are the things that you need to know, because ninth grade is 1/3 of the picture that admissions officers are going to look at. So that's 1/3. And it's a big step. In ninth grade, I also think it's really important to talk about that leap from eighth grade to ninth grade is hard. And the transition is sometimes overshadowed by, well, you got to get up and running, you got to get up to speed. And you've got to honor that they're going through a huge transition of being less of a kiddo and more of a young adult. And so getting started early, I think, is my number one tip.
And then what would you say for number 2? Do you have
Number
a number
two,
2?
number two is managing expectations. Okay. I think that when we talk about our students, we all want the best for our kids. But I also think that um, it was never my expertise in high school to be in math classes and upper level math classes. And so my parents put me in the lowest level math. I took upper level English, I took upper level history, but really managing expectations with your course schedule, and not every course has to be AP, and it might not be a really good decision to put a student in AP when the pacing is really fast. And if you're talking about LD students and students on the spectrum or ADHD, you really have to consider what you are doing to that student to keep pushing them in an environment that does not fit their learning style. And then the third is finding those accurate sources, finding those people who know what they're talking about, who are credible, and not getting sort of swept up in the again, the prestige. I think that a lot of times when you look at US News and World Report, when you look at these kinds of rankings, it can really skew your expectations and your students' expectations. So keeping it to a very micro level of your student, your situation, your financial fit, as well as what is the best fit in terms of emotional fit for your son or daughter. I just think that's so important.
All of that, like all 3 of those tips, like I I could just tell you from being a mom, being able to share just that much information, hearing what you're saying and the guidance you're giving, that even brings a level of like, if someone has been stressed about it, that'll kind of bring that level down, just giving them 3 things to look at, 3 things to dive in on conversation to make it easier on the student and the family. And the emotional fit is huge. Like that is huge.
It is. It is. And I even ask students the question when I'm doing sort of the inventory of what do you want? What do you need in a college experience? And I ask the students the question, is it more important for you to feel comfortable at college or the name of the college? And I've got to tell you, it shocks me every time because I'll say the majority of my students are saying, well, comfort. Comfort is number one. But there are students that say, I don't care. I will live in a tent and go to this school. And I'm like, okay, that's when I have that tough love conversation of this is 4 years of your life that you are investing. And it's not just a financial investment, it's an investment in you and your talents. And to not feel comfortable, I don't think you're going to be successful at that college. And let's talk about other colleges where you might belong a little bit more. They don't always listen to me, but I also think that just having that sort of check, I keep checking their expectations, their perspectives, and maybe changing minds a little bit.
Is there, or I guess in the conversations that you've had with, with families and students that may have had their heart set or their heads set on, one particular college, and it's like you said, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll live in a tent just because just because it has that name. What's the driver behind that? Or what do you feel like that pressure, or where does that pressure do you feel like comes from?
Sometimes from their parents, and sometimes from friends. They're all comparing. They're all comparing. Where are you admitted? Where are you applying? And I have students that are getting to the end game and saying, I want to add 5 of these schools to my application list. And I'm like, no way. I don't really, I don't really come down on them that hard. But I'm like, we're not letting somebody else run the process. We need to know what you're thinking. And if you want to add a couple, absolutely fine, but it's not enough evidence for me to say, to put in the extra work at that point to say it's because your friend is applying. We have a really tough talk about that. And we say, it really is a selfish decision. And it's not comparable. Your friend's experience is very different than your experience. So try not to be moved by that.
Such good advice, because the comparison game is so real, because kids are, they talk and they do compare because of the social media that is so influential now, that wasn't when I was growing up. I'm sure you can say the same thing.
Yes.
But that's just another added pressure. So to really dive in and give them that kind of wisdom and advice, and taking the comparison game out of it, I think is not only really important, but I just think it's solid, and I think it's good, and I think it will even help parents in decision making and helping steer their kids the right direction. So I'm so glad that you shared that. Like, that's just solid.
Yeah, thank
Solid
you.
advice. I was going to say solid
Thank
advice.
you.
So I want to switch gears a little bit, because, you have this consulting business, and you said you started out as a hustle, and now you're like full blown, business with a team. So what was this deciding factor for you? When did you know that, like, this is no longer a side hustle, this is like a real thing? And then what kind of challenges, or is there like one particular challenge that you've had to overcome to just keep pushing through?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. Okay. So when I realized this was not only a side hustle, was when not only my capacity was getting too much, but I was spending all of my time dreaming about this business. And I was putting my I was spending my emotional time, my intellectual time on this business, and teaching became kind of like, oh, Like, oh, I know I've got to do that, but I've got to do this. And it was a push pull. And it just kind of was grabbing my attention more and more and more. Um, I had to make the decision to, do I take on 3 more clients, or do I say no and I keep it as a side hustle? And it was a very hard decision, and I took months to really figure it out. And finally I just went with my heart, because I've always loved admissions. It was my first love, and I just took the leap, because I took a leap of faith. So that's how it changed. And it was just because of capacity, really. What can I do, and how can I manage this? So that was why I changed to a full-time. But then, oh gosh, imposter syndrome is real. I mean, I have 25 years of experience in higher ed, and I was like, who are you to tell people this? And I'm like, it's taken me about 2 or 3 years to say, yeah, I should be telling you this because of this. But I mean, it took me a while, and I don't know why. I think that was a growth process, but also I also think that just learning how to run a business is a whole other journey that I didn't anticipate taking. And so I've worked with coaches. I'm doing a program right now at SPCC. And it's just fascinating. I'm so lit up about everything that I'm learning and everything that I'm able to bring back to my small business. And I never thought I would do that at 49. I thought I'd be like, oh, heading into retirement. And now I'm like, retirement? I've got 20 or 30 more years.
Okay, I can high five you right now, because I am 48. I'm going to be 49 this year, and I feel like I'm just getting warmed up. Like,
Me too.
I'm like just getting started. And the fact is, even the discussion about this hunger to learn, like I have just in the past year, I've just had like this immense desire to just like teach myself things, where I would let things, like you said, imposter syndrome, or I'd be like, well, who am I to do that? Or I don't know how to do that. And I just don't know if I can do that. And instead it's been like, screw that. Like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to set my portfolio up online by myself. I'm going to figure out how to edit a freaking podcast. Like, when I started this podcast, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know how I was going to record, didn't know I'd have to edit, didn't know, like, I had no like instruction. I'm just like, we're just going to do it. We're going to try it. We're going to see it. We're going to see what happens. And then here we are. And I have learned so much about myself at my age too, because that's why I want to just high five you all day, because it's serious. Like, you don't have to stop. And like, and this even goes back to my best friend, who's a mom, and she and her husband own a business, and she's even doing things for herself and pushing herself. And so you get around other people that are doing that, and you're just constantly pushing forward. There is no reason you can't do anything. There's no reason.
There's no reason. There's no reason. And, oh my gosh, this is a bit of a tangent, but not so much. I just saw the movie 80 for Brady, and I'm looking at these wonderful Sally Field, Jane Fonda, Rita Moreno in her 90s in a movie. And I just think, oh my goodness, women especially we have to sort of put things on pause when we have kiddos. And some of us do. And then we sort of shortchange ourselves with the retirement piece. And I'm with you. I feel like I'm just getting started. I'm not going anywhere, and watch me,
Absolutely. I will, watch me. Here we go. Like, I'm all for that. That has been the topic of conversation. So I could not be more excited just about this discussion in itself, because just to encourage other women, like, you don't have to just stop where you are. Your age doesn't define you. It should inspire you to do more, to be more, to push for more, to go after things that you maybe never had any experience in. Or like you said, you have all this experience, like 25 years of experience. And if you had settled into imposter syndrome, you wouldn't be where you are right now. If you just like accepted, well, I'm not there yet, or I need to do something else to earn it, or because those are same thoughts I've had, like, uh, I need this to do that, or I can't move forward on this because I don't have that, all those things. So every bit of this conversation, I think, is timely and so on point.
Thank you. Well, it comes down to a confidence issue, like are you going to have confidence, or are you going to let those sort of demons take over and your negative self-talk? And I mean, it's even just like, and I hate to be Pollyanna, but it's almost like a positive attitude. Like people ask me about my competition, and I'm like, yeah, I meet with them, I work with them, I talk to them. These people who are doing the same job that I do have a different perspective, and everybody, we've all got the opportunity. So, I don't really get into that, well, you need to go with me because of this and don't go with them. Let's all work together. Let's all build each other up. These are mostly women that are doing what I'm doing, and I don't see the benefit of bringing anybody down.
Definitely not. And there's so much room for everyone.
Yeah.
So much room for everyone. There's more than enough room for what you do. Even if it's like, so I'm in fitness, and in my full-time career with Ready Fitness, there's competitors all the time, but there's room for all of us. Like there's
Yes.
room for all of us. And it's just making your own path. It's blazing your own trail. It's creating your client, it's creating your client base. It's, so getting caught into the comparison act, or worried about what the competitor's doing, like i I want to be so busy I don't even have time to think about it. And
That's
that's
me
where I'm at
too.
now. There's no
No,
time to be worried, there's no time to be concerned. Like,
no.
I am who I am, this is me, and I'm blazing my own path. And when you finally get to that place, like, and it's taken me a long time. My husband will tell you, we've had many conversations over the years, and it's taken me a long time to get to a place where I'm confident in who I am, I'm confident in what I'm doing, and I have ownership of it.
Yes.
And when you have, just like you were talking about ownership and the buy-in from the student with college path, it's the same thing in our lives. Once you step up and you flip that switch, and all of a sudden you buy into what you're doing, it changes everything.
Yes, it does. It does, because you're not only living your authentic life, but you're not having to you become less of a people pleaser. It's like, okay, I want to be kind to everybody, but I'm not going to give too much of myself up to make you happy, because that's just not going to happen anymore. And I think that that's just like, I'm getting to be the woman I always wanted to be.
Isn't that awesome?
It's so fabulous.
It is fabulous at 49.
Yes.
Like, that's amazing. Love all of that. Well, do you have any advice for anyone that you would want to have, as far as, switching into being an entrepreneur, or just taking that step?
I think it takes time to really, you just have to assess. I say taking the leap, but I am a very leap averse person. So I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of people. And I think that you need to be open. I'm thinking of doing this. And I had a lot of conversations. I have a wonderful mentor in this area. She is a small hotel owner in Saratoga Springs, New York, and talking to her and sort of hearing like, well, you've got to work on this, and like hearing the tough stuff, but then hearing you've got so much potential. And so I am a talker. I like to talk to people. I like to get their input, but I also did my research too. So I think it takes time, and I'm not patient. I mean, I'm not patient.
Who
I
is?
try to
Who
be.
is patient? Can we
Oh
talk
my
about that?
gosh. I try to be. And I'm patient with my families and everybody, but with myself, I'm like, come on. Come on. You could. So I think patience is number one, research and talking to people.
Awesome. such great advice again. I think the fact that you've been an educator for so long, the fact that this is what you do with families and then applying it to being an entrepreneur, to me, it's like the same things. Everything's in process, and grace for yourself and patience is huge. And we all need to be good to ourselves and patient with ourselves, because there are times where it's like, dang it, I should already be here or there, and just being patient in the process and just to keep showing up. It's just showing up and consistency. It's just like in fitness, just like people that want to, lose weight, or they have some fitness goal. We want to be from A to Z, forgetting all of the, training and all the work that goes in between. But it's the showing up and the consistency that gets you to that goal. And so it's the same. I feel like it's very much the same way in the things that we've discussed today.
Yeah. And like talking about our competition, my worst competition is myself. I mean, I am the worst taskmaster. And, I tell my husband all the time, my boss is just so mean lately. And and it's me. But, it's so funny because I would never be as tough on anybody as I am on myself. So you have to know that. You have to, I meditate every day. I have to like recenter somehow, because otherwise I'm my own worst enemy, and I don't want to be that. I want to be my champion.
Perfectly said. Like, you wrapped all of that up, put a bow on it. Like, that's so on point.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I want to talk about something a little different.
Yeah.
So I want to know what you lean into for inspiration. Is it a quote? Is it a podcast? Is it a song? Like, what is it that you lean into for that?
Oh my gosh. I think talking to fellow female entrepreneurs, I love to hear everybody's stories. These students inspire me every day. I mean, not to put a damper on this conversation, but the pandemic really has hurt our children. And so when you look at the ramifications of that, seeing the resilience, seeing the innovation, seeing new ways of thinking, that inspires me all the time. It inspires me when I talk to moms and dads who have like 5 kids, and I think, oh my goodness, how do you one do that? Like, I don't, how do you manage all of that? So I think that the inspiration comes from talking to people. I get professional inspiration from taking business courses within the small business centers, and really maximizing community resources like the Union County Chamber or the Rotary. Oh my gosh, those can be real strong supports of just emotional support. Like, this is hard. What do you do when but also getting that support back of, you're doing everything right. You're doing a great job. Keep going.
It's so important. Support, community, resources, all of that. And I have great appreciation. And I think when you put yourself in a place to learn, and you have a desire to grow, and then you're surrounding yourself with other people that are in the same spot, like, it makes the biggest difference. You don't feel alone. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just have to be open. Oh gosh, because I've done things in this business that have failed, and I'm like, oh, why didn't I know that? Or why didn't I? And you beat yourself up, but then you're like, you can only learn through failure. That service didn't work. Okay, whatever. Throw it out, do something else. And don't ruminate about it, and you're not going to lose the whole thing. It's not an all or nothing proposition. It's just like, okay, think of something else and run that.
That's it. Well, before I let you, because this has been such incredible conversation, and I sincerely mean that, because there's so much here that we've talked through that I feel like is very much right now probably where a lot of parents are. And I just the wisdom and the guidance that you've given, I think, is going to be very impactful to our community. Is there anything else that's on your heart that you would want to share with the listeners?
It sounds so corny, and I know people are going to probably roll their eyes, but when you're embarking on the admissions process, make room for the magic. And I say that, and people will be like, I get it. But I got to tell you that, you may have very entrenched beliefs of where your child is going to go, or they may have those beliefs too. And then they go to a campus that maybe I suggest, or maybe they've heard about, and they go on campus and they're like, wow. And they're so lit up and so excited. And even though that's not tangible evidence, it is an intangible that you cannot discount. It is a magical feeling when they're going to get on the campus that they need to go to. And just make room for that. Just that is one of the most significant pieces of evidence that I look at with students when they're making a decision.
I think that's a perfect way to end. Make room for magic. Love that.
Thank you.
And I'll sit in that for a while.
I know.
Because I feel like it's that way in anything. I think it's, we can be so determined to pursue things or do things that, we have in our, and then when you are open, just like you're talking about being open, and you allow for things to shift and change and flow. And there are those moments where it's like, wow, this is so, this is amazing. Like,
yes. And you don't anticipate it. You didn't plan for it. And all of a sudden it's here and you're like, wow, that's magic. That's the magic.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to have had you on the podcast today. Can't wait to share this.
Thank you.
Where can they find you? So if they want to get in touch with you to help them with their own college journey, like as a family, where can they find you?
Sure. You can go to NCEWC. So think of it as North Carolina EWC, ncewc.com. That's our website. And we have a number of options. We also offer not only first year admissions advice, but transfer, and we're starting graduate school admissions. So we are trying to help you from the beginning to the end of your education journey.
That's amazing. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much again for your time today. And again, I cannot wait to share this podcast episode.
Thank you. I've had so much fun, Sel, and I have enjoyed it so much. So thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining me today. If you like the podcast, please like and share this with other women in your life. You can find out more about SweatNet on sweatnet.com or follow them on Instagram at SweatNet and SweatNet Charlotte. You can follow me personally on Instagram at itssealsmart. Stay tuned for the next episode of the SweatNet Be Amazing podcast.